Maduro in Manhattan. Why is this in the Southern District of New York? What does the indictment actually charge? What potential legal fights might emerge, and was it legal to go get him in the first place? Let's talk about it. U.S. forces captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cilia, brought them to New York, where they appeared in a federal courthouse in Manhattan. Both of them pleaded not guilty. Internationally, this set off a UN Security Council firestorm and accusations of violations of foreign sovereignty. So the first question is, why is this in the Southern District of New York? The indictment uses the special venue rule under 18 U.S.C. 3238, which states that the alleged offense happened outside of the jurisdiction of any U.S. territory, but the offender will be brought in first to the Southern District of New York. The government gets to decide in these situations where that venue is going to be, and in this instance, they picked the Southern District of New York. Now let's talk about what the indictment actually charges. There's 4 separate counts in this indictment. Count 1 is a narco-terrorism conspiracy under 21 U.S.C. 960A. That alleges that the individuals participated in a conspiracy to benefit foreign terrorist organizations and provide them monetary or logistical support, pecuniary support. The allegations are that there was a benefit to FARC EP, Segunda Marquetalia, ELN, TDA, and the Sinaloa cartel. Count 2 is the conspiracy to import a very well-known white powdery substance that's common in South America under 21 U.S.C. 952, 959, 960, and 963. It alleges that the individuals conspired to secure the importation of this substance into the United States. And counts 3 and 4 allege that there were firearms or destructive devices used in the commission of the aforementioned crimes, specifically machine guns and explosives. And that's a violation, allegedly, of 18 U.S.C. 924. Now, the invasion of Venezuela was sold as a execution of a warrant for arrest. Maduro at this time and his wife hadn't been indicted on these particular charges, but they were indicted previously in 2020 in the Southern District of New York in absentia. Now, the indictment from 2020 had very similar charges, but the State Department and the Department of Justice actually had a $15 million reward for the arrest and capture of Nicolas Maduro tied to that previous indictment. Actually, Joe Biden, during his presidency, upped that to $25 million, which then Trump upped to $50 million. So there was this outstanding indictment. The new indictment is a superseding indictment of that previous charge, and that's what Maduro and his wife pleaded not guilty to. But the question is, was it legal? Was it legal to go in and execute this warrant? And that's a bit of a complicated question. Generally, when we do have extradition treaties, which we do have with Venezuela, although it's the relations are a bit broken there, you're supposed to, on an international stage, utilize the extradition treaty measures to acquire the offender before taking extraneous measures like was taken. I'll get to some of those political angles in a little bit here. First, I want to talk about some potential defenses that Maduro might raise. First would be a head of state immunity. Generally, the courts aren't keen to intervene in foreign relations matters. You can see that in Republic of Mexico versus Hoffman, ex parte Republic of Peru. Generally, the courts leave the foreign affairs issues and try not to take judicial actions that would interfere with those. But here's the catch, is the United States does not recognize Maduro as a legitimate head of state. So the U.S., as a matter of policy, doesn't recognize him as a head of state. This immunity will fall by the wayside. And we saw this back in the 90s with Noriega, U.S. versus Noriega, where they denied him head of state immunity because the U.S. did not recognize him as a legitimate head of state. A second defense that Maduro might raise is foreign official immunity. So this is a conduct-based immunity, unlike the status-based immunity of head of state. This is conduct that the things I was doing was conduct tied to my official capacity. Even after somebody leaves office, this can provide some protection. We saw that in Samatar versus Yusuf back in 2010. The government's rebuttal is going to be pretty simple to this. Running a white powdery substance into the United States isn't isn't an official act of any president, but it is something that Maduro might raise as a defense. Now, complicating these defenses is the legitimacy of his election. It is contested, and I think very rightfully contested, that Maduro did not actually win his previous election. But that is a separate issue from the legal case. The U.S. doesn't have any inherent right under U.S. law or international law to simply go in and correct another country's election. But it does have an impact on the immunity. So it might be something that the courts have to analyze in the ancillary about whether or not he actually is a head of state, even if the U.S. doesn't recognize him as a head of state. I expect that we're going to see some motions to dismiss from Maduro's team. I'll have a better idea of what their arguments are, and we'll cover those in the future. But now we can kind of speculate and talk about the hard part of this is, was it legal to invade a foreign country and seize their leader under the auspices of this warrant? Domestically, the debate is about whether the president had the authority to do this without notifying Congress. Can the president use military forces to conduct actions in a foreign country without Congress? Now, the president does have war powers resolution authority that comes from 50 U.S.C. 1543. And the president has quite broad authority to utilize the military in quick response without needing to notify or receive congressional approval. But they do need to notify Congress within 48 hours of such actions taking place, and that did happen here. The question is that any sustained operations require congressional approval. So if this was as simple as going in, getting him, and getting out, then it's unlikely that any congressional approval would have been needed. But from what it sounds like, in Trump's own words, this is going to be a sustained operation.
As I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place.
That well extends beyond just the authorization that he might have to go and execute an arrest warrant. That is a sustained military presence in a foreign country and absolutely is going to need congressional approval. Now, internationally, this has caused some blowback. The United States is a member of the UN, as is Venezuela, and the UN Charter Article 2 states that you can't use force against another UN member absent authorization from the Security Council or acts of self-defense. There are some exceptions to this, but a domestic criminal indictment is not one of those exceptions. Now, what the UN does or doesn't do isn't really going to affect the underlying court case at all. The courts aren't bound by anything that the UN does, and the UN can't direct the United States courts to do or not do something. So that's not going to have much of an impact there. But what will have an impact, and what I'm looking to see from Maduro's legal team, is possibly a venue challenge under 3238. The due process nexus is going to be really interesting to see here. Not only are they going to have to prove that there was this conspiracy to import the white powdery substance into the United States, but the individuals had knowledge of that and intended that to happen. That's going to be difficult road to hoe for them. The timing is going to be important, and the connections to these alleged FTOs, the foreign terrorist organizations, is going to be important, and the government's going to have to establish that. And then, of course, if they fail to do that, those other two counts 3 and 4, the firearms related counts, are going to fall because they're predicated on those first two offenses. So this is going to be an interesting legal fight, but the underlying question of was it legal to go in is going to be more of a matter of interpretation than pure legal answer, and whether or not there were certain ulterior motives. I guess that's going to be in the eye of the beholder. Now, make no mistake, the fact that Maduro is gone is a good thing. I've represented clients who are here on asylum status from Venezuela, and their stories are just horrendous, tear-jerking, really, just horrific things that they have had to go through. As people who may have been opposed to the Maduro regime, the actions of the colectivos that are in Venezuela, I could go on for hours on that. So the fact he's gone is a good thing. The question is, was it legal? And that might be in the eye of the beholder, and then whether or not there may have been other, let's just call it ulterior motives, I guess remains to be seen.